I've been using Kitty, the terminal, for several years until last week when I decided to update it to version 0.37. And something happened in 0.36 that made me look for a different terminal, and I decided to move over to Wezterm. Let me actually tell you what happened. So in Kitty version 0.36, the maintainer basically enforced a rule that only fixed width fonts can be used. And my favorite font is Dank Mono. And I want to keep using Dank Mono because I'm used to it, I like it. Honestly, I paid for it, why not continue using it? So that's why I decided to move over to Wezterm. As you can see, people are creating issues, but yeah, basically the maintainer says that if it worked in older Kitty versions, that was a bug that has now been fixed. So yeah, you can't really use Dank Mono or other non-fixed width fonts with Kitty anymore, even though there's no issue with Dank Mono. Kitty is just not going to accept it anymore. So in this video, I'm going to get Wezterm, which looks like this by default, and make it look like my Kitty version, just using the Dank Mono. Right, so here's how my Kitty version, or here's how my Kitty config looks like. There is no title bar, there is no semaphore lights in the top left. It's just one minimalist frame, which is the terminal, and that's it. It also has this blurred background image, and yeah, not too much of a configuration going on. So in order to do that, I'm actually going to cd into my dot files and open them with just Vim. Open the config and actually create a new directory inside called Wezterm. There we go. Inside I will create a wezterm.lua, and this is where I'm going to write my configuration. So the beauty is that Wezterm's configuration uses Lua as a config language, as opposed to, for example, Kitty that uses a key value type of language. It's not even a language, it's just a markup language or a key value annotation, right? So in order to create or start a Wezterm configuration, we need to bring in Wezterm like this. We need to grab the config object or create the config object by doing wezterm.config builder, and then we'll just need to return the config. In here, in between these, we're going to write our configuration. But before I do that, I actually need to make sure that the Wezterm directory is mapped into the home/.config, because my dot files are in a separate directory. In order to achieve that, I need to go back into the dot files and actually run stow.-adopt. Okay, if I go to /.config, I'm going to see a Wezterm symbolic link that basically points to the new directory that I just created. So whatever I write into my Wezterm directory is going to show up in the home/.config. All right, with that out of the way, let's go back into NeoVim and continue our configuration. All right, so the first thing that I want to do is split the configuration into multiple sections. And let's start with the font settings, for example. I want the font size to be 19 pixels. So now when I save and hit Command R, we're going to see the font size actually increased immediately. Wezterm has like a auto reload feature, which is going to be really handy for this configuration session. Right, so other than that, I want to set the line height to be 1.2 or like 120%. And I also want to load in the font. So config.font is going to be wezterm.font with this is a built-in method. I'm going to say Dank Mono nerd font because I recompiled Dank Mono to also include the nerd font icons and stuff like that. So I'm just going to save this, and there we go. this is Denk Mono now. We can see that the font changed here, especially here in the comments, because it's cursive now. It's really good. All right, that's about it. One thing that I want to change is the cursor. Right now you can see that it is green, so let's actually change that. I'm gonna create a new section called colors, and I'm just gonna do config.colors. And I'm going to set the cursor background to be white. Okay, if I save this, there we go. The cursor is now white. But look what happens when I move over the focus. We can see that the outline is still green. So let's also fix that by cursor border. We're gonna set that one to white as well. There we go. Now the border is also white. Nicely done. Okay, and yeah, the cursor is the only thing that I want to change right now. Now let's move to the appearance section. I want to set the window decorations value to resize so that we lose the title bar at the top. I don't like that. By default, I think it's resize and full, but we just want to keep it to resize so that we can still, of course, still resize it. Otherwise, there's like a third value, I think, which is called none. That's not going to let you resize the window if you wanted to. So we'll just keep it at resize. The next thing that I want to do is get rid of this tab bar at the top. And there is a value, the Boolean flag that you can set to true if you want to hide the tab bar only if one tab is visible. And that is config.hide tab bar if only one tab. And if I set it to true and save, there we go. We lose the tab bar. So you can see how we are basically very close to the configuration of Kitty. Now I actually need the background image and just a couple of more things. So let's go with that. In order to grab the image, I'm actually going to create a directory in the Wezterm directory called assets. And I'm going to go into the Kitty configuration and just grab both of these BG blurred darker images. So there we go. I don't want to keep all of the configuration in just one file, so I'm going to start to split up the configuration. We need to point to the images that I just copied over to the assets folder. So I'm going to create a constants.lua file. And in that, I'm basically going to create an object that holds or points to these images and like just exports them so that we can import them into the main Wezterm Lua file. All right, so I'm going to create a local M object and just return it. In there, I'm going to attach the BG blurred darker, and I'm going to use os.getEnvironment because this needs like it needs an absolute path to the image. So I'm just going to get the home directory and concatenate it to /.files /.config Wezterm assets, and then the name of the image, which is BG blurred darker with dashes .png. There we go. And I'm going to copy this over for to point to the other image, which is just BG-blurred, not darker. I occasionally change between these two depending on the contrast on the text. And I'm going to create a third one called BG_image, and I'm just going to point to the BG blurred darker for now, because I don't want to change if I want to change the image from darker to the regular one, I'm going to change it here and not in the Wezterm config. There we go. So at the top, I'm going to bring in the constants by just hitting require constants, and I'm actually going to put this above. There we go. We are importing the constants, and in order to set the background image, I'm going to say config.window background image, and I'm going to say constants.bg_image. When I save it now, the image, the blurred background image, should just appear. There we go. There it is. One thing that I notice is that there is a bit of a padding around. Like you can see here, you can also see here. If this is something that you like, you can keep it as that. But I don't, so I'm going to set up the config.window padding, and I'm going to set it to an object that has left set to 0, right set to 0, top set to 0, and also bottom set to 0. When I save this, look at the padding here in the bottom left corner. There we go. Now we basically removed the padding. I also have another section called miscellaneous settings, if that is probably spelled correct. And I'm going to set the max FPS to 120. To be honest, I haven't seen the difference that much, but I saw that some people are setting this value max FPS to 120, and I'm using a MacBook Pro with 120 Hertz. Maybe doesn't map one-to-one. I'm just gonna set it and, you know, be like the rest. So max FPS to 120, and also I'm gonna set the prefer EGL to true. This basically means prefer Apple Metal to be used instead of the WebGL or something like that. I don't know. Honestly, again, I saw that these two are recommended settings to be set in Wezterm, so I'm just gonna go ahead and set them. So I got one more thing that I want to set in Wezterm, and that is the ability to have a transparent background. Because sometimes I make these videos where I overlay windows on top of my camera view, and it looks cooler if the terminal was transparent. Like, for example, if I go here and cd, for example, into dot files, and let me actually open the Kitty configuration and change the current theme to be the Cyber Dream Transparent, and restart Kitty, you'll see that the window is transparent, right? You can see me waving, but the terminal is on top of me. So I do want to achieve this effect in Wezterm as well. I don't want to change it manually, like change the theme. I actually want to utilize Wezterm's commands in order to change the configuration on the fly. And this is a pretty cool feature that Kitty doesn't have. So what I'm going to do is, aside from the assets, I'm going to create a new directory, not command, named commands. Inside, I'm going to create a toggle-transparency.lua file, and I'm going to define the Wezterm commands in this file. So I'm going to bring in Wezterm, and I'm going to define a command, like an object, and then just return that command. Inside, we need to set a brief property to be a label. So basically, commands in Wezterm are, if you, for example, hit Control, Shift, and P, you get this window that lets you pick between commands. And the brief is the text or the label. There's an icon and there's an action. So let's set the brief to toggle terminal transparency. Let's set the icon to MD circle opacity, and these are basically material design icons. And we need to set the action, and we're gonna set it to Wezterm.action callback, which accepts a function with the window. There we go. Inside, what I wanna do is grab the overrides, or basically the current configuration that we have in Wezterm, and we're going to modify it and return it. And that's how we make, that's how, not return it, but apply the new configuration, right? So using the window, we can invoke the getConfig overrides methods. If there are none, we just want to use a blank object like so. If the overrides.window background opacity hasn't been set, or the overrides window background opacity is 1, then we want to do something. Otherwise, we want to do something else, and we'll just end this conditional here. All right, in case we haven't set the window background opacity or it's set to 1, we want to make the background transparent. Lose the background and make it transparent. Otherwise, we want to bring back the opacity to 1 and also return or reset the background image to the blurred image. So we're going to need to bring in the constants in this file again. But let's just set the background opacity to 0.8 first. So overrides.window background opacity, we want to set it to 0.8, and also overrides.window background image, we want to set it to an empty string, right? Otherwise, if we already are transparent, we want to go back to non-transparent, to opaque. So we want to set the opacity to 1, and let's also bring in the constants again. Require constants, and I want to set the image to constants.bg_image. This is the only thing that I need to do, and in order to apply that, we want to say window set config overrides, and we'll just set the overrides like so. There we go. This is not a registered command just yet. In order to do that, I want to create an init.lua file along the toggle transparency file, and I want to re-export this command basically. In case I anticipate more commands in future, I just want to have one file so that we can require from one file and bring in all of the commands like so. All right, so toggle transparency, we're going to require commands dot toggle transparency, but we don't need the .config.wezterm, we just need commands.toggle transparency. I'm going to create a new M object again and return that M object. And I'm just going to, this is an array, it's not an object, but yeah, I'm going to set toggle transparency inside. So this is our commands barrel file that re-exports all of the commands. In order to use it, I need to go back to the main configuration and register the commands. So I'm going to create a new section, custom commands. And I'm going to say wezterm.on, I bet these are events or something like that, augment command palette. We want to pass in a function, and we just want to return the commands. And the commands do not exist yet because we haven't imported them. So commands equals require commands. That's it. Okay, so because Wezterm automatically refreshes, if I open the command palette and type in toggle terminal transparency, there we go. We can see that our command is register. If I hit enter, there we go. The terminal is transparent. It doesn't have the blur, as you can see. So let's fix that real quick. It is under the appearance section. So we can do config.macOS window background blur, and I want to set it to something like 40. So look at the background now, and yeah, because I have a typo here. This is also cool that Wezterm lets you know that, you know, did you mean window background blur instead of window background blur? Yes, we did mean that. So let's actually fix that. We're missing a U. Window background blur. Okay, let's save this, and hey, there we go. I can close this window now, but yeah, now we can see the background blur. You can't really see the details of my face, and now you do. So this is it. This is basically how we also bring Kitty up. This is basically exactly how I had my Kitty configuration. There we go. With the only difference is that I can still keep using my Tank Mono Nerd font. All right, and yeah, that's basically it. I get to use a terminal that looks exactly like my previous Kitty terminal, but gets to keep the Tank Mono font. So I hope you liked this video. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop a comment in the comments below, or just join my Discord at creatures.sh. We have a pretty cool Discord server. A lot of us people are new Vim users and also Kitty or Wezterm users. So yeah, join in and say hi. Thanks for watching, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Take care.